And so I would like to invite all of our guests to either our observation windows or our viewing deck to get a chance to see some of our bears. Right now we just have our yearling Holly out in our 2.5 acres. We will shortly be bringing down 2 of our other bears shortly in about 10 or 5 minutes. I apologize for the chainsaw that you may be hearing in the background. That is not from the Bear Center, that's from the property next to it, so I apologize for that kind of annoying sound right now. I would also like to mention that this is a worldwide broadcast, yes, going out across the globe, and could not be possible without many of our worldwide listeners, and especially our worldwide volunteers. Thank you all so much for putting in many hours of your time to make these broadcasts possible. One volunteer in particular is the person who operates our pan, tilt, and zoom camera that shows this pond area. This is a volunteer that could be from anywhere in the world who actually operates this live camera. Looks like our yearling Holly finally made it down the white pine and is coming across the rock bridge to one of our staff members. Holly Bear is 19 months old. She is our youngest bear. She is not full grown yet. We weighed her yesterday and she is about 108 pounds, which is a very healthy weight for a yearling her age. Our staff member has provided her with a cube, which is basically a plastic box with 2 holes drilled on either end. In this cube we have placed some dried cranberries and some seedless red grapes. We also have some holes drilled into the cedar tree out in front, which Holly Bear right now is standing up to reach. It looks like from here, I think it's red grapes and peanuts in the shell, which are in those drilled holes. Now the purpose of giving our bears a cube or putting food and holes in a tree is to show off their simple problem-solving skills and to demonstrate to you folks how bears think and the dexterity they have. Little Holly Bear is pretty well adapted for the cube, as you can see, and it takes a little more effort for them to get the food rather than us just throwing them their meals. Some other parts of a black bear diet that we feed our bears here. They are omnivores, so they are not strictly carnivores. They are not vegetarians. And so what that means in terms of diet is the majority of that diet is actually vegetation. So leaves, grasses, they love white clover, which we have planted in front. It looks like Holly found some treats inside that log. And she's the only bear I think that can get herself that far in our log out there. But black bears are very food motivated, as you may assume. And I think Heidi, our staff member, put in some red grapes and some peanuts in that log. Anyway, in the wild, black bears rely heavily on vegetation as well as berries and nuts. Only about 10% of a black bear's diet is protein, which is a somewhat surprising percentage. A majority of that protein comes not typically from red meat, but from bugs. Yes, one of black bear's favorite foods are bee and ant pupae because they are very high in protein. And Holly Bear here, we have seen her foraging for ant colonies. They rip open fallen over logs and things like that to get those immature insects, which are very high in protein. Black bears are opportunistic, however, so let's say there's remains of a deer with some meat left on it. Black bears will eat that raw meat. They also will eat fawns that have not stood up yet in springtime when they come out of hibernation. However, typically, they rely very heavily on nuts. Now in Minnesota, Black bears really rely heavily on hazelnuts because they have a high fat content. And they have a later crop, and so during the times right before hibernation, when they really need to pack on the pounds, hazelnuts are a great source of fat for our bears. But here at the Bear Center, we feed our bears 5 times a day, so they already had breakfast, and this is their first enrichment program, which they get fed. There are 2 other enrichment programs throughout the day, and then they get dinner at night. Right now we are feeding them some romaine lettuce, carrots, and usually a fruit, which may be an apple or a plum or a pear. This morning little Holly Bear got a giant red apple, which she chowed down pretty fast. We also give our bears a raw egg in the shell to get another source of protein. And our bears really love that raw egg in the shell. And even little Holly Bear, she's only 100 pounds. She is very strong. Oh, there's Lucky. Speaking of strong bears, Lucky and Honey just made an appearance. Lucky is our 347-year-old male black bear, and he is the black in color bear. Our staff members have provided him with a tube as well. And Honey, our 390-pound cinnamon phase female. Now you may have noticed that Holly, our yearling, she made some vocalizations and ran away. Now that is not because she is scared of Lucky, our male, but it's because she is somewhat frightened of Honey, our cinnamon phase female. Because Honey, she is 18 years old, will chase away our little yearling and chase her up a tree. So on numerous occasions, Holly has been sent climbing up this cedar tree out in front. Now Honey, our cinnamon phase 18-year-old, does not climb anymore, and so Holly knows she's safe from our Honey Bear. Excuse me. Now Honey, she is a cinnamon phase black bear, so even though she is not black in color, she is indeed a North American black bear. And just because she is called a cinnamon phase black bear does not mean she will phase in and out of this coloration. It just means she will be this color her entire life. It is very rare though, especially in Minnesota. Only about 5% of black bears in Minnesota are this cinnamon color. The more west you go, however, from Minnesota, the more common this coloration is. For some reason, I'm not really sure. Black bears can actually also come in 2 other color phases. There is the white spirit bear, the Kermode bear, which is a blonde color, very beautiful. But this is a very small subpopulation only found in British Columbia, Canada. There is also the glacier bear, which is another very small subpopulation of black bear, found to the west, which is a beautiful gray, almost blue hue color of black bear. However, 9 times out of 10, if you see a black bear, especially in the wild in Minnesota, it will be black in color. We do have a 4th ambassador bear here at the Bear Center. His name is Ted Bear. He is our largest male. Our largest bear, period. He is 500 pounds and 17 years old. Now, each of our bears has a separate pen area about the size of a 2-car garage, and in that pen they have a denning area, which kind of looks like a doghouse, obviously a little bigger for a black bear, that our bears can sleep and den in the winter. And Ted Bear is in there right now just taking a little break, kind of resting a little bit. But those are the 4 ambassador bears we have here at the North American Bear Center. We have 2 males, 2 females, and they have 2.5 acres total to roam around, which is enclosed by 2 electric fences. The only man-made part of this enclosure is the pond area and the rock den, obviously the toys, things like that. Otherwise, The habitat that was here already is what was fenced in. Now black bears, they like this type of habitat that you see in our enclosure. They like a water source, obviously. They rely on a food source, which for bears, like I mentioned, is vegetation, berry-producing plants, nuts, bugs, things like that, as well as trees they can climb. And black bears are very expert climbers. They have long claws, as you may see in Holly right now. You can see on her paws, her claws are very long and they're sharp and curved a little bit. And that's because black bears' biggest defense mechanism in the wild is to climb up a tree. They are extremely solitary, extremely timid animals. They typically do not like to be around other bears or people for that matter at all. And so, let's say they sense something in their environment that's dangerous, or they see as danger or something they don't understand. That will freak out a black bear, and what they'll do is run away and typically go up a tree. And so a question I get all the time is, if you come across a mother and her cubs in the wild, or even just a black bear in the wild, what should you do? Now, I've talked to some research assistants who work with black bears in the wild in this area. And what they say to do is to talk calmly, identify yourself, say, "Hi bear, I'm a human." Open your palms to say, "Oh, I have no food," and just back away. This will let the bear know, hey, you have no food for them, no nuts or berries that you're holding that they may want to eat, and they'll usually just go on their way. Now, if you want to scare a black bear to make it run away, if you clap your hands, talk loudly, or even just taking a plastic bag that you get at a grocery store or something and shake it, that will send the black bear running. Now, mother black bears will actually abandon their cubs if they're faced with danger, or more typically, they will signal to their cubs to climb up a tree, and then will usually follow suit. This is not the same trait as a brown bear, so a grizzly bear will act much differently around her cubs. She will actually defend her babies if she is threatened in any way. So black bears and brown bears they're different and similar in some ways. However, black bears are extremely, extremely timid. They are more flight than fight animals. And so most of the time, anyway, you really won't see a black bear because they have excellent senses of smell, and their hearing is also quite excellent. If you look at our bears out right now, Lucky and Holly, their ears they're pretty big compared to other bear species, and they can move individually, each of their ears. And that's because they rely very heavily on their ears to identify things in their environment and to see where sounds are coming from, things like that. And that's why on very windy days, black bears typically are not seen anyway. They like to stay out of the way up a tree typically, because the wind really, really interferes, with where the sounds are coming from. And if a black bear can't tell what a sound is, where it's coming from, if it's dangerous or not, it will not want to be out and about in its environment. And now Lucky is giving you folks a great display of how big black bears are. Once again, he is about 340 pounds. And I believe there are some dried apricots, peanuts in the shell, and red grapes on that platform. Now he is 7 years old. He is a sub-adult technically, so he's just hitting maturity. Usually by the time a male is 8, they are mature. He may grow a little bit more. But this also shows how black bears eat food. They use their tongue to kind of pinpoint what they want to eat. Black bears' tongues are really soft and sticky. They're not coarse at all. And that's so they can pinpoint exactly what they want to get. Also, black bears can walk plantigrade, so they can walk on their hind 2 feet. And many times in the wild, if you see a black bear standing up like that, it kind of looks like a threatening type of pose. I mean, if Lucky stands up like he just did, that's a big bear. It's kind of scary. And many people think that it's a defense. They're gonna attack. They're gonna come down and charge at you. But usually, when a bear is standing up like that, it's just trying to see what you are, smell what's going on in its environment, and hear better. So it's just trying to identify the situation. And oftentimes, if you're, hiking in the woods, especially in Ely, Minnesota, you have to load on that Max DEET bug spray or some sunscreen. And that smell is confusing to a black bear. And like I mentioned, they have extremely strong senses of smell. They actually have an additional organ on the roof of their mouth that aids in their ability to smell. And so, let's say they catch wind of that, they may stand up just to say, what is that smell? You're not a bear, and don't think you're a human. And usually that will freak a bear out enough to make it run away or go away. They also can see in color, which is very interesting. I did not know that before I came here. I assumed that they saw in black and white, but they can see in color. So their senses are very, very, very acute. They have very good paw dexterity, like I mentioned, and extremely good long-term memory. Now, you may have heard some of our staff members calling our bears, especially our little Holly. And yes, our bears do respond to their names, and they can actually tell who is calling them. And so Heidi, our staff member who was calling our yearling, little Holly was like, "Oh, that's Heidi. I know her. I'll come to my name." And now Heidi and Holly have a very special relationship. Holly sees Heidi as somewhat of a mother. And that's because our little yearling, she was orphaned as a cub. She was in a forest fire in Arkansas. Eventually, the Arkansas Fish and Game found her, brought her to a rehab facility in Tennessee where she was deemed unreleasable, so she could not be rehabbed for the wild. We then received Holly December 27th of 2013, and she was a scared, very timid bear. She did not come down in front like this. She was scared of people on the deck, of voices. This microphone and the speakers freaked her out. But now, as you can see, she's right at home. And these two bears, Lucky and Holly, are extremely playful, as I'm sure you can see. And they both still climb. And Lucky has taken on a somewhat big brother role for little Holly, which, again, has also aided in her confidence levels developing more and more. And now it's a kind of cooler day, so I'm sure our bears will be a little more active. On the really, really hot days, they were kind of sluggish, and I don't blame them. And you guys are seeing some great black bear behavior right now. Now, as you saw, Honey Bear, our 18-year-old female, she kind of charged at Lucky, and Lucky just stood his ground like, whatever, come at me. And this is very typical behavior of black bears. Honey is extremely solitary, introverted, which is a normal characteristic of a black bear. And so Lucky was kind of getting in her space, and she did not like that. So she vocalized and charged. Now, also, Honey Bear does not like our yearling Holly too much. And I mentioned before, she will chase her up a tree. But this is not the first time that Lucky Bear has prevented Honey from chasing little Holly. And as you can see, Holly is following Lucky and checking out where he is. And Lucky is kind of keeping an eye on little Holly Bear too. And this relationship would definitely not happen in the wild. Lucky would be a very established bear with an established territory. And he would not tolerate a little yearling, especially a little female following him around. That would not happen. It's a very unnatural relationship, but nonetheless, we are happy. And we're happy they both have playmates with each other. They have people to play, or bears to play with. And a few days ago, they were actually both in our pond playing around. It was really cute. And on days like today, it doesn't seem, overly hot, but being a black bear with a black coat, they can heat up really fast. And so all of our bears swim in our pond and utilize it, especially on these hot days. Now our bears may come back down in front in a little bit. They're just starting to reach the point of the summer called hyperphagia, and that's basically the period when their metabolism changes and their bodies store all the fat they need for winter, and so they really are looking for food a lot more. They eat more food. We have to up what we feed them. And we do have wild foods planted in our enclosure that they can eat. But they always like to kind of come around in front because this is typically where we feed our bears to see if there's anything left over. But I will conclude with that, and we will have some staff members walking around to answer any questions. I could probably talk about black bears for hours, but I won't do that. So I once again would like to thank all of our worldwide listeners and volunteers for making these broadcasts possible. Excuse me, I think I'm losing my voice a little bit. And remind you folks that today we are open until 7, and the pass you purchase is a full day pass, so feel free to come and go all day. We have 2 more enrichment programs. We have another one at 1 o'clock, and our last one at 4 o'clock. So we will be feeding our bears out in front again. Also, if you are interested in other Minnesota wildlife, the International Wolf Center is on the other side of town, and that is a great organization where you can see some very beautiful wolves. But on behalf of me and the staff here at the North American Bear Center, I hope you enjoy this beautiful day in Ely and at the North American Bear Center. Thank you all very much.